Fruitful week, but not without the usual political accusations. This week, discussions on the deepening mistrust between the EC and the major opposition party, the NDC, reignited following a leaked tape of hot exchanges between the EC boss and the NDC General Secretary.
Making their side and obstructing the discussion. No, so you were laughing.
So laughter interrupts.
No, but when you were talking, we didn't. It's
Please,
like you are ridiculing us.
I beg you. Those who are making the noise, I have kept quiet. I'm not part of what is happening. If you have a personal problem against me, you may bring it up.
We do not have.
Respect is end. If you put yourself in a respectable position, people will respect you.
Yes.
Polka analysts want the EC chairperson to be more tolerant of divergent views. Also this week, Ghana dropped 4 points on the Press Freedom Index for 2019, losing her status as best country in Africa in press freedom due to abuse of journalists in the country.
This year, at the beginning of the year, it was very shocking to learn of the death of Ahmed Hussein Swaleh. It's not that there had not been journalists who died before, but this looked very much like some sort of a targeted assassination. The investigations are ongoing, but I think it was very chilling to all of us. As a result of that, in part, the latest Reporters Without Borders dropped Ghana on its index. You probably all know this. Dropped 4 places and now is in 27th place.
It's not augur well for us. It is not the best time for us to be dropping in our press freedom rankings. I mean, you need the press to be at the vanguard of whatever change may happen.
There are indications the Information Minister will be summoned before Parliament when it resumes to respond to questions on Ghana's abysmal performance on the Press Freedom Index.
I mean, insist that the minister comes to us with concrete steps that his ministry would take to safeguard and protect journalists.
Plus, Ghanaian workers are demanding high salaries with better pensions as they join the rest of the world on May 1 to celebrate workers with organized labor expressing worry over government's continuous non-payment of debt owed SNIT, adding it could jeopardize SNIT's ability to operate effectively.
We cannot expect our pension schemes to perform effectively and efficiently if government, which is the single largest employer with over 600,000 workers on its payroll, fails to pay social security contributions.
But President Akufo-Addo has promised government will settle those arrears.
I'm informed that the Ministry of Finance has arranged for payment of 200 million CDs and the bond of 700 million CDs towards the retirement of the arrears owed to SNIT. This will leave arrears of 800 million CDs, which will be included in next year's budget.
The president also hinted more than 80% of the country's revenues are used for the payment of salaries in the public sector, which experts warn could be dangerous for the country.
80% of national income being used to pay public and civil service. I'm not too sure we can last the journey we want to carve ourselves getting out of IMF. It means we are in trouble.
And Parliament directs Energy Minister to renegotiate government's amended deal with AGM Petroleum. The minority had opposed the proposal to amend the original 2013 deal, insisting it will reduce Ghana's holding in the block from 43% to 18% and shortchange the nation with $10 billion. Though the renegotiated deal was approved before the House went on recess, the Energy Minister has 6 months to return to Parliament to update MPs on steps taken to renegotiate the amended agreement. We have all the analysis on Editors Forum, and we are live on digital address GA09925339, on Facebook.com/JoyNews on TV, on Twitter at JoyNews on TV, on YouTube and across the world on myjoyonline.com. You can also join the conversation via 0266047417 on WhatsApp. My guest in the studio, Stephen Enti, is anchor with TV3, and Ifya Pukia is editor at Adom FM. Good to see you, lady and gentlemen.
Yeah,
but
I've been sandwiched by the two of you.
It feels
which
nice,
is very
isn't it?
uncomfortable.
You like it, you're enjoying it.
I said off like that I like it.
Will make you like it.
Now it's putting me under pressure. It's squashing me.
It's pleasantly uncomfortable. That's what I say. I want to start with Ghana's ranking on the World Press Freedom Index, and Ghana lost her status, we know that, and she dropped in 4 places, and this has been attributed mainly by the killing of a Tiger IPI member, Hussein Swale. We all know what happened, but according to the report, more seriously, a group of investigative journalists had to spend part of the 2018 hiding after producing a documentary on the Ghanaian soccer corruption, which we are all aware of. And then it makes a very important also statement that a ruling party parliamentarian who had been named in the documentary publicly threatening one of the journalists was not ever sanctioned. It's very important with this. Now, how are you receiving, and I start with you, Steve, the news that Ghana has dropped from her best position in Africa to now to a 3rd place? And I mean, the reason is just that journalists have not been treated fairly.
Well, I mean, I know that we've had considerable amount of freedoms in expressing our views and doing our work. But I mean, I left journalism school, JIJ, in 1998. From the time I went to JIJ and today, the difference is that we had a lot of opportunity to express ourselves. People like me have gone through the mill and have done their work. I'm sure same with Ifya also. But over the past few years, we cannot fail to recognize the subtle threat. It's everywhere. If you go on social media, for example, there are gangs of people who are unable to tolerate the views of anyone else. And if you're a journalist, they continuously tag you for being this or for being that. Now, what that is doing is actually subtly silencing people whose work it is to inform the rest of the citizens. So I have not directly felt a threat in doing my work, but of course I feel that I've been a target of social media abuse, and I call it bullying, online bullying, which all constitutes a subtle attempt to silence journalists. So when I saw the ranking, the first thing that came to my mind was how well was Ghana doing in the past anyway? And so for me, I think that for many years before the ranking, the previous ranking and today's ranking, we've been doing bad, but we've been getting worse consistently. Journalists being attacked by police officers, and even individuals getting the will to hit journalists. There are several examples of these. So I think the threat is real. And I worry that if we don't do anything about it, the institution of the media is going to get silent eventually.
If you've consistently been, telling people or making the noise about the bitter consequences of this kind of uncouth treatment on journalists, how do you feel that, I mean, as a journalist, that your country, Ghana, has dropped from a very admirable position, and it's because some journalists who are telling the truth or who are going about doing their normal duties are being killed and are being attacked?
Very disappointed. Very disappointed. Very disappointed because we have come far after 1992. You remember what happened in 1992 when Rekubobe's radio station was closed down because he didn't have the proper licenses to operate. From those days of Radio Universe, when Alaji was the only one who could boldly, because it was a student radio station, could scream and demand accountability from a military political leadership. To this day, I feel very disappointed because we're almost going back. And that's why I feel that in the days of former President Rawlings' regime, we could understand that it wasn't very easy for them to appreciate the transition, that we're no longer under military rule, and that freedom of expression, which was guaranteed under the 1992 Constitution, which was a new era, a new air that was blowing, was difficult for them to appreciate. But we have been under 1992 for a while. We have been under Fourth Republic for a while. And at least at this point, people appreciate the role of the media. They appreciate the contribution of journalists in solving problems, in holding political leaders accountable, in ensuring that development happens the way it ought to happen, because the media has a specific role which has been defined in the Constitution. We have to keep authorities, the political leaders who have been given the mandate and the resources of this nation to govern us, on their toes. That's a specific job that has been given to the media, and we can't depart or deviate from that specific objective. So I feel very disappointed, but I have been screaming about this. Others have been screaming about this, that we ought to be careful. There's a new revolution, almost like what Auntie spoke about. He said bullying, but I think it's more than just bullying. There's an attempt, a strategic attempt to silence the media, to undermine the importance of the media.
And if you like, for political reasons.
For political reasons. And both parties are guilty of it. The two parties who have been in power under Fourth Republic, NDC and MPP, have all been guilty of this. And it is so chronic that no amount of our talking is doing anything to it. And so I think that this is a wake-up call for us to move away just talking about it, move away from just the RTI, which we for some reason ignorantly we think that is going to solve all our problems. I think it will not, but it's a step in the right direction. I think that we should move beyond that and demand certain key measures, and government ought to come with us. If government is not willing to come with us, I think that we should bring government to the table and set benchmarks or key performance indicators for ourselves, because the media is crucial in this democracy that we have accepted. And whether we like it or not, as long as we have decided to walk on this democratic path, we cannot do anything to undermine the media, and we cannot allow politicians to undermine the work of the media, which is what they are doing. If you see what Auntie was speaking about, if you go to social media, which is a very previously they were openly doing it, openly threatening, openly harassing people, openly bullying people. Now they've moved to social media. So as a media person, you can't express your opinion. You can't disagree with the ruling government, and you can't disagree with opposition. You can't demand accountability. You can't praise. You can't commend government. It is frustrating.
It is.
As a journalist,
you want us to bring politicians to the table. The question is, will they come? Are they willing?
No.
Will they even submit themselves?
Aisha, we don't need them to agree. Aisha, we need to push them to come. We don't need them to agree.
But look at this. More importantly, with the report, and I'm very interested in how we've been described. That Ghana is, although as a country continues to be seen as one of the democratic countries in Africa, and at the same time, we've been described as creating a civil war style atmosphere with our political discourse, where journalists are attacked with impunity and used as scapegoats. But I was not surprised when I had this kind of
set specific examples.
Are you surprised at all? And do you also agree that politicians play double standard when it comes to freedom of journalism?
I don't even want to go into the moral issue of double standard. I see that as a moral issue. Let's look at the practical issue. Can you ever imagine a Ghana at election time without a free press?
Yeah.
Look at the records of the elections that we've had in this country. It was the vigilance of journalists. We slept at polling centers. We stayed there 2 nights, 3 nights in a row just to police the democratic systems this country has given us through the Constitution. So I'm saying, like Ifya is saying, that our role is constitutional. People will have to begin to respect that we're here. We're not going away. Our role is important. We're here to help shape the political systems they enjoy. So whatever it is they think about, I mean, if you are in government, you must subject yourself to accountability from the people. And that the Constitution has given us the power to lead. So please, politicians should get used to the fact that we are here and we work together for the democratic development of this Ghana we have. It is our role that makes them have a space to operate and function. If we were not here, I beg to differ that there will be any vibrant political discourse. If we don't go pitching up our cameras and our microphones at the places they hold the news conferences where they make all the noise,
and these days they have the audacity to call press conferences at dawn in the night, and they don't give a damn. Nobody cares on weekends, and they don't. You see, I worry because they don't respect the media. Yeah. And I think that GJA, Media Foundation for West Africa, and the individual media houses must come together. We should move beyond the rhetoric of, oh, we condemn this attack, we condemn this, we condemn that. That's bogus. Yeah. For me, that's frivolous. That is cheap. We have moved away, and that's why
we've just become a statement issuing
institution. When are we going to take somebody to court? When are we going to say that we are approaching the Supreme Court to invoke the original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court in a matter of interpretation? When are we going to say that we need something to be done? That's what I'm saying, that we demand that they should be there. For now, I think what the Media Foundation of West Africa can do is we need to take pledges from politicians. It is their followers. It is the people they incite who are sitting on social media and other places who are intimidating, attacking, bullying, abusing, assaulting journalists. We need to take pledges on them. Show those pledges on video, on TV, on radio stations, that your MP says he's committed to a free press. He supports the media. So if your MP plays what you call the double standards by going behind and inciting a party supporter to attack a journalist, then the person is exposed because you are on camera supporting the media. But notwithstanding, we are not saying that the media is perfect. We are not saying that we're infallible. We are not saying that everything we're doing is sacrosanct. Yes, we've had it wrong sometimes. Yes, we've made errors. But our errors, when we've made them, when matters have gone to the Media Commission, when they've gone to court, we've accepted them. The few ones who have not accepted them, that is why the law makes room for remedy.
But the politicians
and all that
themselves have also gone wrong sometimes.
Absolutely.
It's a collaboration.
Absolutely.
It's a
but they play up our errors.
Parties.
They play up our errors and make it look like, oh, but you are not angels, as if they are angels. You see, so we know there is a human institution, and all of us are not perfect, and that's why we need to ensure that we grow together. But where you deliberately, strategically, start out to undermine the media for your own political advantage, that is where the problem is. But they don't realize they are creating a problem. Often, like he said, in elections, I mean, look at how expensive our airtime is. But we stand everything down and we focus on elections. Check the last election, 2016. When we called the election at multimedia, the election headquarters, then the EC comes out at a press conference, says that, oh, the system has been hacked. Eventually, if you look at the election results, it was close, almost exactly what we put out. Projected. The same is for 2012, when everybody was chastising us, including the ruling government today. MPP was chastising you've called the elections, and this election is being rigged, and all that.
And 2016 was even closer.
It was closer.
EC's results.
But every time, especially for multimedia, every time we have called the election, well, we don't call the election per se, but we give provisional, we project. Everything we've been, our results have been confirmed. And it's been consistent. So how do you sit down and say that the media is not a crucial arm of government? How do you sit down and sit aloof and say that you allow the media to be attacked, call us names, allow your supporters to bully us, and then you say that the media is not perfect? And the politicians are not perfect. The three arms of government, if you look at the Auditor General's report, consistently, the corruption there, if we're putting the corruption in the three arms of government together, that the cost, the value of the corruption in the three arms of government will do a lot of work for Ghana. But what have we said about that? And then we leave that and we're attacking the media because we are not perfect, when all of us are imperfect.
We're all human.
I think this is very shameful. But like I'm saying, we should move beyond just the talk. Asha, it's almost embarrassing for me that we come and sit here every year.
And the fact that
we didn't need international organizations to tell us we've dropped. We've known this.
We know we're dropping already.
We know we're dropping. Before Ahmed Swale's case,
they only made it official.
We had been talking about this. Nobody was taking us serious. I think even they should be disappointed in themselves because they failed to listen to us. It didn't have to take somebody's child to die for them to say that there's an issue, to describe it as vividly as they're describing it, to demand attention.
But this is the Western world. I mean, I didn't expect anything less than
that. But we should make our disappointment in them known to them.
Ourselves, is press freedom important to us?
It is.
And I want to drop it or narrow it to journalists. We, the journalists, what do we do for ourselves? I mean, you see us jumping all over, talking for people, highlighting the plight of other people.
To be able to focus
but when
on
it comes to our own plight or one of our own, what do we do? What kind of noise do we do, knowing that we are the fourth realm of the estate, knowing that we've got the power in our hands with our pens to make a difference? What have we done over the years? And there's one point that has been highlighted all throughout, and the politicians will quickly jump at it and say, you, the media yourself, sometimes you make yourself available for politicians to treat you this way.
Right. Aisha, I mean, I think that before we go into this, we must take the opportunity to also acknowledge the roles individuals and systems have played in shaping the discourse, the media landscape we have today. And we must be able to acknowledge Kwesi Chum, the CEO of a multimedia group, who from the inception of the multimedia group has been instrumental in bringing up a media system that can be trusted, in bringing up a media system that can hold itself true to the world for comparison. And I think that people have invested. Kwesi Chum and the likes have put a lot, their whole lives, into making sure we have a system we can trust. So on a day that we celebrate Press Freedom Day, we shouldn't forget that they are the pillars that made it possible for you and I to come here and exhibit the skill we have to the rest of the world to make meaning. So having said that, I think that it is clear from the example I've just given that individuals, businesses, private entities have put money and resources into making sure that we have a media that is fit for purpose. So I think that over the years we've grown tremendous. If we look at the graphic group, communications group, you look at the UTV, Peace FM group, and you look at TV3 and the rest of the media houses, everybody has grown. And it's not fair to suggest that we haven't been growing. We have been growing. We've been coming from the era where journalists were not that professional to the era where we're getting more educated, more enlightened, more purposeful. So I am saying that journalists are putting in their best. Citizens who are interested in making sure that we have a vibrant media are also putting in their best. So the few ones who haven't acted professional, the few ones who have brought the name of journalism into disrepute are there, but they do not reflect the overall professionalism
and that's
and
also
quality
available in
that
all
the
other
Ghanaian
sectors.
media has
there are
exhibited.
People, the bad nuts among the profession.
Exactly. So you look at the coverage of the Nigerian election, for example. Look at the performance of the Nigerian media. Contrast it with the Ghanaian media and the coverage of our elections. You will see that we were phenomenal and we set the standard.
And very much organized compared to
what they did.
So
I am saying that we do not invite the abusers on ourselves. We do not invite the poor ratings on ourselves. We do not enjoy sitting down to see that whenever we go out to do our work, we feel threatened. No, society needs to accept that our role is important. The political elite need to also accept that we are here for the good of all of us. So when they fly our negatives in our face, I think it's not fair.
That's why I'm saying that it's a collective responsibility for all of us journalists. You see, if we are not our brother's keeper, that is where the politicians will have the impetus to do what they're doing to us. For instance, if a politician misbehaves, and I'm happy that in this report a particular politician's name was mentioned, and that's very sad for Ghana on the international front, that politicians are using their powers to do whatever they like and they're not sanctioned.
That's not the first
but
time.
You see, the thing is, if politicians abuse us and all journalists decide that we are boycotting your events, tell me how the politician is going to function without the media. But you see,
Aisha, that
one media house may decide that, okay, we want to boycott the functions. Tell me whether the other media houses will throw their weight behind their own who has been abused.
Do you know why that is so?
The point
because
I'm making.
The independence of a media house also speaks to the ownership of that media house. The reason why at Multimedia we're independent-minded is that the owner is independent-minded.
Yeah, he dissociates himself from all our businesses.
Completely.
He doesn't interfere.
I have been here for a long time.
I have to give him
I
that
do
credit.
not remember the day Kwesi Chum himself or anybody in management has had the balls to come and say, don't do this and that and that. The culture of the business.
He's the type that you can tell him, no, this is not
You can disagree with him.
Tell him no.
Exactly.
But in other media houses, you can't.
Yeah, but again, that's what I'm saying.
These are
it
when
speaks
the
to the
ownership are politicians.
And it is because of them difficulty of politicians in influencing our editorial policy. That is why they decided at a point to own media houses. So if you remember, at a point NCA was giving frequencies and TV and radio to politicians. So you have community radio stations scattered around, owned by politicians. How do you expect the media to be united in a circumstance like that, in a situation like that? We cannot. So once one media house is attacked or a reporter is attacked, one media house is targeted, then you expect everybody to rally behind, like you have in other jurisdictions where you have the RTNDA or BBC, all those independent broadcasters association, they would come together because they are extremely independent. But here you have owners who are politicians, who are deliberately influencing the system. When the Muntie 3 matter came up, we know the facts of the case as was presented to the court. When they had to go into the ownership of the business, then we realized that it had political undertones. And that is when we realized that the presenters on that station cannot be independent-minded. And that's just one example. We have several examples on my FM, other places, where the stations are owned by politicians. So when you are speaking to the ownership of a company, the unity of the media to fight their battles, it cannot happen.
And it's not something that the report.
But actually, the issue of boycotting as a tool, the issue of boycotting as a tool of protest, I think also becomes very difficult because at the end of the day, there's freedom of expression. Everybody can say what they want at what time, so far as you're decorous and circumspective with the effect it has on other people. So if, say, X amount number of media houses decided to boycott, using boycott as a tool to protest, definitely you cannot stop someone else who chooses to disagree and go on to cover. So I think that it doesn't.
We need to be our brother's keeper. You don't necessarily have to be a multimedia journalist for me to feel your pain when you've been abused by a politician or any other person. And interestingly, the report makes mention of this, and it says that about a third of the media is owned by the state or businessmen linked to government. Okay, and exactly.
But I think that's even not a correct representation.
It's not a fair representation.
It's not a fair representation
because not linked to government, linked to political parties,
linked to political
specific political traditions.
Exactly the point. And this also goes back to the point that you were making, that they have their political agenda. And so if you are a journalist, you dare not do otherwise. You definitely have to toe their line, and which is also denying us of our independence, because we're supposed to be. Sometimes it's sad when the politicians themselves are making mention of journalists who are seen to be politically affiliated to a certain party, and you can't defend it because it's just obvious and it's unacceptable.
I must add that being aligned to particular political tradition, it's not necessarily the problem.
It's not wrong because of course,
you definitely go to
the definitely go to the booth. So, but it's unprofessional.
But being professional and ethical
there are two different things. Yes, there are two different things, because even if you go to other advanced democracies like the United States, you have media houses who are aligned as Republican.
I mean, take Fox,
or left
Fox
or right.
News, for example.
They are aligned.
You shouldn't be biased in your
absolutely, absolutely. But you see, the word bias came about because of the possibility of the word itself being active.
Okay.
So we shouldn't also kid ourselves by thinking that people can be completely objective.
Okay.
That is also there, because even objectivity is also subjective. You understand? So we have to give room, but I think that the key word is to be fair, and balance, so that even if the person is not objective, like Trump has accused CNN of not being objective, if you listen to CNN, you can see that they are being fair. When they say that the president has lied, has the president indeed lied? And then they play voices of the president himself saying something contrary to what he currently says. Then you know that, yes, they may not be on the side of the president, but yes, the president has lied. Fox, same. When the Gitmo 2 matter came up, it was Fox that disclosed it. CNN probably wouldn't have disclosed it because Fox is not aligned to the Democrats. So they would pick on a matter like that and push it out. But the question is, was it true at the time that the Gitmo detainees were on their way to Ghana? And the fact is, yes, they were. So we cannot be perfect. That's the matter I raised initially. But the thing is that the ownership is an issue that we have to deal with it. But I think that even the report is not doing justice to Ghana. Because before this report, and we don't need them to tell us what is happening in Ghana, we know Ghana better than they do. or Drigacheko.
But a lot of many a times we know our problems, or wait for them to remind us of our problems.
I think in this matter we should be fair. GJ, Media Commission, senior communication advocates, Mrs. Amwakohine or Drigacheko, everybody in the media landscape has seen it and they've spoken about it at a point. They have all spoken about it. But the question is...
But you just made the point that we should go beyond that.
Absolutely, I agree. So what we haven't done is to move beyond that. But they are doing the same thing. I mean, they are just talking.
But and they won't come and fix our problems for us.
But that's what I'm saying, that we need to bring the political leadership, all stakeholders to the table and say that, look, the media is a key arm of government. We cannot sustain this democracy without the media. So yes, the media is not perfect, but so are we, the other arm of government, the judiciary, the legislature, the executive. They are not perfect. How do we work together and ensure that the media's credibility, their respect is enshrined somehow, so that we do not because once people don't even respect or regard the three arms of government, when people have a matter, and you are aware, Aisha, you are aware, the first point of call will be a media house, and not even a police station,
definitely,
not even the legislature, not even.
There's a light out, or there's a break in.
The media house is the first point of call.
They're calling the media house. Somebody is there somewhere. They're calling the media house.
So once we lose it, we've lost this democracy, and that's why I think that the politicians themselves ought to understand the seriousness of their action, the terrible repercussions that comes with their strategy to undermine the media, to bully the media, and to kill the media off.
I feel that in prescribing the solution to all of this, apart from the key issue of getting all stakeholders together to agree that our work is important, our continuous show of professionalism is also very key, which is why you can decide not to. If you mentioned earlier that we don't need them to agree, what we need them to see is to see that continuously we are being professional, and continuously we're doing the work objectively and fair and balanced. So when we do that, I think that our work will speak for itself, and that also brings me to the issue of the Ghana Journalists Association, the association which regulates the professional standards and ethics of journalists in this country.
Is that their role?
I think GJ needs to do more. I mean, I don't see them as a regulator, but we're an association. Don't laugh. But I mean, I respect the Ghana Journalists Association, and I want the GJ to do more. I mean, do more in a sense that I feel that if GJ was proactive in continuously going on education campaigns to let the general public understand the work we do, that could go a long way in helping create.
I think that the NMC will be in a better position
would be, but see, the reason I mentioned the Journalists Association is that the Journalists Association is the association which should be interested in our welfare as journalists,
But we need to change the rules. You see, because as of now, the GJ is a voluntary organization.
It is.
So you decide to join or not. It's not like the Bar Association where mandatorily
you must go through rigorous requirements and processes of qualification.
In future, that is what we have to do. Amend the laws. And that's why I think that the NMC is in a better position to do that. Where you remember when they tried to bring the LI, the new law to regulate the space, and there was a backlash as to
because that was too harsh.
Yes, I think that we can go back and review the law, do proper and a more expanded engagement of the stakeholders, and bring a better law. Because I feel that the NMC has because the mention of NMC has been made in the Constitution, so they are in a better legal position to deal with control mechanisms of that space. Than to give that to GJ, that is more voluntary.
That's true, but more importantly, I had the opportunity to speak with a member of parliament who is also a politician and who is also a member of the communication committee of parliament. And you know how important this committee is, because the very person whose name was mentioned in this report is the chairman of that committee, the committee that ought to understand the work of journalists better than all the other committees. And he says that he's going to make sure that the committee summons the Minister of Information to Parliament to explain why we're doing bad on the index and why journalist attacks have not been addressed, because we've been talking about this all this while. And then again, he's going to make sure, because I know because of this issue, the man is before the Privileges Committee. As to where Parliament has gotten with this matter, we do not know. And he says he's going to tackle it and make sure
that matter will not get anywhere.
And that's the point I'm coming to, whether this will be effective or how this is going to pan out, because this is the man who is the chairman of the committee, and you expect him to talk about things that he himself has done and he's not shown any remorse about. If it does ever happen, do you think it will be effective?
I do not even know.
I have no belief in such a system. I absolutely have no belief in such a system.
But like it or not, it's our parliament, and I mean, it's part of their job.
Even in the US, Trump, it has a very strong media background. President Trump, he used to do the Apprentice. He's been a very key person in the media space. But it's a president who comes to power, and everybody, he attacks more journalists than anybody else.
That's true.
So we are not isolated. Ghana's situation is just part of a whole agenda in the world.
But doesn't make it acceptable. Looking at our culture and looking at where we are coming from, we are very peaceful.
But that is why Aisha, I'm saying that the Media Commission is in a better position to do this than relying on a parliamentary select committee or whatever. We need to go this battle our own way.
But the politicians need to come along with us.
I'm not sure.
I don't think that they won't.
If this doesn't benefit them, they're not going to be interested.
But they're the very persons who perpetrate the acts.
But Aisha, have you forgotten? Look, we had a president whose tenure under which his own aide smashed a journalist recorder and refused to even apologize, commenting about other journalists who have been attacked. This is the country we live in. It's a very hypocritical trend where everybody does what they think will benefit them politically. We have a president who has struggled in the trenches with journalists. The president was with media people. He's a human rights lawyer. And then under his tenure, we are having this record. I think that we should ignore the NDC and MPP's commitment to anything and go our own way. Look at how long it took us to ensure that we pass the RTI into law. How many times did we scream? How many times did we march to parliament? How many times did we demand? Almost 20 years to pass the RTI. What shows that they have commitment towards ensuring that the media is a key ingredient.
Even the RTI was passed with some loopholes,
exactly,
which the attentions were drawn to it. But
eventually we had to compromise.
To go through
we had to compromise.
It was going to favor them.
We have to compromise. So we shouldn't have any expectations of them. Else we'll be very, very brutally disappointed. We need to go back to the NMC law, review that law, and ensure that we will use the lessons we have learned into the new law, and ensure that we pass that law that law to protect the industry.
For that to also take about 20 years.
But that won't take 20 years. For the NMC, I think it will be better.
You're not optimistic.
I hope so.
But I think that will be the right way to go.
Interestingly, the Secretary General of the RSF made some remarks after this whole report, and for me, it's very important. He talks about halting the cycle, and he says that halting the cycle of this fear and intimidation is a matter of utmost urgency for all people of goodwill who value freedom. And even before that, he says that if the political debate slides openly towards a civil war style atmosphere in which journalists are treated as scapegoats, then our democracy will be in great danger. How do we do this? Because now we've all admitted that we need to take the politicians out of the equation and deal with the matter ourselves. Where do we start from?
For me, I think that, like I told you, the core of this is the journalist himself. I believe that if we continue to be professional, if we continue to hold forth the ethics of our profession, we will not be at the mercy of those who would willingly want to come against us without the public and institutions being aware of it. I mean, so I think that we need to get our acts going. We need to get the Journalists Association to be up and coming also. We need to take our profession seriously beyond just the rhetoric. And there are many instances where journalists have been entangled in political parties, and this has affected their objectivity and balance. So when we start from there, then we can now begin to expect that the National Media Commission, like Ifya mentioned, will also get involved, the commission which is constitutionally empowered, to put in a structure that will will protect us a little bit. I mean, our society is becoming continuously intolerant of journalists, and it's a problem. I mean, I remember when I went to do my registration for the National Identification Card, I was in queue for hours, and I wanted to be in the queue. I didn't want anybody to get the sense that I was trying to get a preferential treatment because I was a journalist. And it's unbelievable, and I kept asking questions constantly. Now, I got to the man who I've been putting all my questions and nagging to, and he asked me my profession. I said, journalist. Ah, no wonder. Really, yeah. I mean, loudly, so loudly, and started intimidating me, and started saying, you think that the process is long. We'll see how long you will be here for. So I said, don't justify your shoddiness because I'm asking you a few questions. Get to do your job and leave me alone. But then what that taught me was that this is an totally intolerant. So not just him, but there are a lot of people who are becoming continuously intolerant of journalists. You come in, you have an encounter with a police officer, and even without saying anything, they recognize you as a journalist, and their posturing is hostile. You know, so continuously we're getting there. I mean, you get to a place and they get to find out that you're a journalist. Some people are, and so what? You know, like the disgust people are showing to journalists is worrying.
It is.
And so if
worrying.
we don't clamp it down by one, continuing to uphold our professionalism and being totally objective and fair, and then get the National Media Commission, like Ifya mentioned, to also play its part in the GJA, I think we'll be going round in circles.
But I think that we have a good opportunity. We have a Minister of Information who was a journalist, has been in the industry for a long time. This is a challenge to him to correct what has been done over the years, to ensure that he bridges the gap between the executive and the media.
Actually,
to ensure.
But unfortunately, it's under his tenure that we are even dropping.
Well, which is that's what I'm saying. It's a challenge to him.
But it's fair to say we started dropping not in that term, long before that. So I guess that it's just come to a head on.
We did well in 2018. 2018 is when we were best.
But you see, even that is contentious. I mean, I disagree. That's why I said that long before this Ameswale issue,
as for the
Latin's
attacks have
my
been there.
issue at NHIA, long before all those things, we knew that the work of the media was under threat. There were subtle threats here and there. There were politicians owning media houses, which should have been the first red flag. Because media ownership is key to the survival of a media house, and then also to the role that we play in a democracy. So it was very, very key. We all didn't pay attention to the red flags until we got to this point. So it's a challenge to Kojo Ponkroma, the minister. But sadly, you know, he's a very young politician who is in. I feel sorry for him because I feel there's very little I think he can do as a young politician thrown with given that kind of position. There's nothing he can do. He will be sitting in cabinet, will not be able to put this issue across, will not be able to defend this issue, will not be able to argue this issue with the kind of big fishes in cabinet.
But he must be able to deal with it.
But he won't. The reality is he won't.
That's what comes with the job.
The reality is
once
he won't.
He's hit with that,
the job he has as a minister, I think that there are lots of strings that are being
because he looks to me like somebody who wants to rise to the top.
But that's the more reason why Aisha.
Somebody who wants to be a president.
That is.
Well, but you see, I understand you can't do without the media.
But you see, Aisha,
you
but that is the more reason why he has to play ball. And we know what it takes to play ball in politics.
True.
You have to compromise. He has to sacrifice. So personally, he may have
sacrifice journalists for him to be at the top.
Haven't you heard what the politicians say? And when your mother, you have to sell your mother for power. You sell your mother for power. When you get the power, you go and use the power to get your mother back. That's a big slogan. They say it. NDC MPP, they all say it. So I say boldly that it's a challenge to him as minister. But I also admit that he cannot do FOCO.
So he cannot do FOCO. So we'll go through the cycle.
So he cannot do FOCO.
I mean, the most important thing is the security and how they deal with such matters.
Look, security.
And in this issue, they have failed us.
We are obliged as media people ourselves to ensure our own security. Our media houses are supposed to ensure that we are secured. We cannot jump in fire and expect that somebody somewhere is going to ensure that we are secured. In the kind of democracy in which we are.
I agree with that point. But in the event that a sitting member of parliament, member of government decides to attack a journalist and he's not been sanctioned, nothing has done about it.
Under President Muhammad, under President Muhammad, at the Flagstaff House, a journalist recorder was smashed at the Flagstaff House.
I remember.
At the Flagstaff House.
Fresh in our minds.
At the Flagstaff House.
That is
when I was attacked at NHI, there was a president in power. Did you hear any comment, any condemnation, anything? Nothing.
That's what.
Under President Kufuor, I was attacked.
I know.
At a MPP Congress in La, did you hear anything? Nothing. Focal. So I'm saying that we should be realistic. This is Africa. This is Ghana. They won't do focal. We should take them. We should ensure that we push the NMC to get the amendment that will give them the power to protect journalists. If we rely on the politicians,
that's what happens.
We may die.
Yeah.
Let me take a few of your comments in the studio now. This one, you didn't add your name. Please add your name to the comments you sent. He says the media must be free from criminal libel, beatings and assassinations, but please turn the focus on yourselves and be more objective and professional in your reportage. When you do this, you will regain the independence and respect that you deserve. And this one is his word. Okay, so if Yapoko, at least Andogbi did not shoot the journalist to death. Okay, but we also don't know who shot him to death. At least the court hasn't come out to say that it is A or B that shot him to death. So that's what he says. And this one is coming from Yakubu. He says it is sad. The very person who claimed he was going to use Anas's principle to fight corruption while in position has suddenly become anti-Anas principle of fighting corruption. Ahmed Hussein Swale was gruesomely murdered last year under Akufo-Addo's government after the Nyantechi Akufo-Addo government expose. And he goes on and on and on. And he says the Ghanaian Times reporters were badly beaten by police and journalists as someone who looks like an okay, somebody described a journalist as someone who looks like an onion seller. In fact, Ghanaians in general are no longer safe. Now, kidnapping has engulfed the country, and Yakubu is lamenting over all of this. This one is from Azemeti Godwin from Kufurijia. He says, Madam Aisha, I salute you and your colleague journalists for an indefatigable spirit towards shaping the image of Ghana. Notwithstanding many of the zombies journalists, oh please, that's a bit harsh. They are just following their stomachs instead of the code of ethics. They intentionally bring your work into disrepute for brown envelopes from their paymasters. And that's the point he's making. Let's see this one from Elom from Bacho. Now he says that 2017-2018, a journalist with City FM was attacked at the MPP headquarters, and it happened a few days to the attack on the Adom FM reporter by MPP sympathizers. The director of news at City FM on his morning show gave the government party 24 hours to condemn the attack since they were mute. By evening, the governing party had done the needful and was on the station showing the following morning, as well as visiting the Adom FM reporter. Okay. And let's see what this one is saying. Please add your name to the messages. A number of messages have coming, and this one says, Dominic says, please JoyNews. We see people come to talk and leave without their name. Oh, okay, so we would address that. Thank you very much for the. And this one, you also didn't add your name. It says, congrats for your good job. Climate change should be considered for discussion thoroughly on your platform and other media landscapes. Okay, well taken. We'll ensure that. And this one say, hey, multimedia, you see now your own Azuri cannot sleep in Ghana again. Who told you so? As Manasseh is around. And unfortunately, somebody asked me where he was. I said, he's around. Why are you so bothered? All of a sudden, you are interested in... Please leave the gentleman alone. Let him live his life. And very interesting comments coming there. Let me take this last one. It says, we appreciate all Ghanaian journalists defending the defenseless, because without you, the citizenry are helpless and doomed. There's the need for the government to resource Ghanaian media without any impediment, so that they can perform their constitutional mandated duty without fear or favor. And we urge Ghanaian journalists not to also use their profession to write stories without facts to damage the reputation and credibility of individuals. Very interesting comments you have sent there. And you're still on Editors Forum. Been talking about Ghana's ranking on the Press Freedom Index. Ghana dropped. You know that last year we were best in Africa, and Ghana has dropped by 4 points, and now it's on the 3rd position. So we're looking at how we can get back to that, and most importantly, how journalists can be defended and not be attacked while they go on their duties. Let's now talk about the state of the Ghanaian worker. And throughout the week, we've been talking about how the Ghanaian worker can be made more efficient, can be made more independent, and all of that. As we celebrated the Independence Day, a number of issues came up, and top of the issues were the fact that workers were having the May Day, May Day celebration. People were having low salaries, and that culminated into
low productivity,
better paying.
Worse pensions,
low pensions. So, I mean, in a nutshell, we're looking at how we can increase our salaries and also increase our pensions. But there was something that also came up, that even though we want high salaries, there could also be a problem with the formula of calculating the pensions. That has always left the worker. And sadly, I heard that some workers even take as low as 300 Ghana cedis as pension. That's not...
my father, before he died, was taking 150 Ghana cedis.
That's certainly not the best.
That's terrible.
For the hard-working Ghanaian. So, for you, and I'll start with Ifia, what do you think is accounting for this distress of the Ghanaian worker?
I think it has to do with salary. So, I have recently had the opportunity to go through the pension and the SNIT calculations. And I realized that what they do is they use your best 36 months salary, your best salary. So technically, if you're collecting 300 Ghana cedis a month, and throughout your career, your best salary was 350 for a period consistently, say, for 3 years, 36 months. That is how your pension is going to be calculated. So the key to ensuring that workers go home on pension and they get something substantial, to live on, is to ensure that they are paid well. They are paid well, which is why the pension amendment bill that came offering the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 pension is a laudable one. But the objective for which those amendments was done has not been achieved. So we need to deal with that issue. And then we have to go into the issue of how can workers benefit from better salaries when productivity is an issue? Because that conversation has come up every May Day. We have that conversation that workers, I think it was President Kufuor who made the famous comment of government pretends to pay, workers pretend to work. So that is the kind of charade all of us have been engaged in. But there's something that is going on in the private sector which is worth noting, and we can adopt that into the public sector. I think that some public sector institutions have done that, which is performance-based salaries or conditions of service. But how do we do that? How can we employ technology to ensure that people's calculation or assessment of their performance is actually correct and accurate? Because often what you find in most organizations is this clocking system where you clock in and clock out. But people can clock in and sleep around. People can clock in and come and lazy around. People can clock in and read newspapers or work lotto like we used to say in the past. The people come in, and so we need a system. Fortunately, we have the benefit of technology which is being employed in other jurisdictions which we can adopt. So the key thing is ensuring that workers are paid well and having the systems that we have, that we need to adopt. But unfortunately, the public service is such that it's very conservative and resistant to change. So I dare say that if we attempt to use any technological innovations to try and assess workers' performance, contribution, actual value, there will be a backlash. And often government caves in when it comes to votes. Oh, we won't vote, we won't vote. And so we miss the opportunity of ensuring that we employ new innovations that are being used in other jurisdictions to ensure we get value for service, value for money, value for our salary, and sacrifice that for, or let the usual go on, because we are afraid of losing the vote, and we come back to business as usual. But the worker is not happy. Government is not happy. Government is using, and let me say that over the years, government has also been overly political. So, for instance, this NAPCO, government had no business doing NAPCO.
Yeah.
Had no business doing NAPCO.
But they had promised people.
But
jobs.
You see, jobs. But the jobs didn't have to be NAPCO.
They
You already had NYEP, which was not performing well because monies that were supposed to have been go to NYEP had been diverted to other things. So there's record. For instance, when Banredu introduced the law, the talk time law, that was supposed to go and fund the NYEP. There were problems. Diverted, even monies were diverted from the road fund to other NYEP because it was political. If we move away from the political nature of policy to plain objective and the motivation of just wanting to help people, and not just the politics of I want to create jobs, I want to be seen to be creating jobs, even when I'm not creating jobs, sustainable jobs, empowering the private sector, like President Kufuor said. Unfortunately, it was just words. He couldn't back it with action. The government has no business being creating business, but enabling the environment for the private sector to create the business. But what we do is that we enable the environment for political businesses to grow. And then when that political party is off power, they collapse that political business, and the new political party creates another business. So look at the Zoom Lions, look at the RLG, look at all the other business. I can assure you that even NAPCO, when another government comes, it will collapse it because it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So if we move away from the political intention of creating jobs to enable the system, look at President Trump's employment records. The reality is that if you go into the numbers, the statistics, he's creating jobs. The private sector is expanding. The economy is doing better. That's the kind of system we need. We don't need political companies. The RLGs who will fold up and go to Dubai and go to other places.
Unfortunately, over the years, that's what we've had.
But
of course,
that's why we're having this conversation.
I'm just beginning to wonder how the politicians will dissociate their politics from creating jobs. You see, because this is a politician who's come and promised, and somebody has said that our politicians promise too much, so that when they come into power, they want to be seen as fulfilling their promises, and then putting all of us our lives in jeopardy.
The thing is the political mindset they have. The political polarization. So there are existing businesses that are not political. Why are we not helping those businesses to grow? Why is government insisting on creating business on its own, or creating businessmen who are MPP businessmen, NDC businessmen? That's what we're having. But multimedia has been around for 25 years. Why can't we set up a system that can a fund that multimedia can tap into and say, let's apply for this funding, let's expand the company, let's create more jobs? Why should we have an RLG when there are already companies that can do what RLG was doing? Why should we have a Zoom Lion or another company under MPP when we have existing companies that are doing the same thing? So what we do is we undermine the existing companies that are not political. So we force businessmen to take political party cards. Political party membership cards, so that they can survive on the job market. This is what is killing us. If we move away and allow the economy to operate on its own, build businesses without having any political mindset, those companies will survive. Those companies will be the backbone of the economy.
You know, there are no jobs in the system. That's to start with. So when we start talking about low salaries, low remunerations corresponding to low pensions and all, the critical question we should be asking ourselves is, what happened to the informal sector? When we talk about jobs, many people think formal sector jobs, those who will go to offices, sit down, pull their desk and decide to work or not to work, formal sector jobs. What about the informal sector? So I think that in the quest to create jobs, governments over the years have lost track of the ability to create more jobs in the informal sector. There are lots of people who sit at Mokola Market, for example, who hold MBAs and who are graduates from universities and have law degrees and all of that, but they are involved in creating businesses in the informal sector. So when the informal sector person does not have a consistent way of paying Social Security and National Insurance Trust SNIT contributions, then they come on retirement and have no pension at all. Or the formal sector jobs which are not giving a lot of good salaries to people. If you have a security officer who works in a formal establishment, although not a government job, is not paid properly, and perhaps the employers decide to or not to pay pensions, they come on retirement poorer than. So I think that our focus as a country should be also how we can get the informal sector involved in the computation of national jobs, because like if you are saying that private sector businesses which are doing great because they set for themselves key benchmarks, they set for themselves key performance indicators. You will not be here if you were not performing continuously for 2 years. You'll be thrown out of the window. That's how it is. I mean, you must consistently meet your targets, your annual target. If you don't meet it, you are out. But you got a job. You have been on the job for X number of years and be meeting the same demand on performance. So I think that it's time that governments take a look at how we expect performance from the public sector, because if you do not perform, it's not fair for you to expect to get more for the job you're doing. And
but talking about performance also brings to book the issue of tools and conducive environment for working. The Labour Act and even the Factories, Shops and Offices Act requires that employers provide a very conducive environment for their workers.
Conducive is subjective, actually.
The tools that they need, the tools that they need to perform their duties. If you employ me, you don't give me tools to work, you are doing me a disservice. And I think that even the act gives you at a point you can sue your employer for not giving you the tools, because at the end of the day you will access me, and if you don't give me the tools to work with, you will now tell me that I'm not being productive. I think we should listen to Dr. Anthony Ban, who is the General Secretary of TUC, who was enumerating some of the problems that workers are challenged with during the May Day celebration.
That is inequality in pension benefits. We expect that there will be a policy to correct all this during your term of office. Another shortcoming has to do with some kind of discrimination against women in terms of women's access to Social Security. This is another weakness that has to be corrected. These weaknesses in our pension system could be attributed to inherent flaws in the legislation governing Social Security, as well as failure of our social policy to recognize the needs of vulnerable people in our society. Mr. President, this has to be corrected. Pension analysts and actuaries are very quick to point to low salaries in Ghana as the cause of inadequate pension. So in 2017, organized labor constituted a technical committee to investigate the computation of pension benefits. The committee found that, yes, indeed, low level of pay is an important factor. But another important factor which is contributing to low pensions has to do with the way pensions are computed. So in the last 2 years, organized labor has been engaging board and management of SNIT and MPRA on the computation of Social Security benefits. Mr. President, I'm very pleased to inform you that we are making very good progress.
So that's Dr. Anthony Ba enumerating some of the issues facing workers. And more importantly, you heard him talk about how government has been indebted to SNIT and making it not perform well over the years. And another thing that I also heard from the president, which we will delve in, is the fact that more than 80% of all government revenues is used in paying public sector. That means that all the other sectors are now going to compete for the remaining 20%.
Yeah.
That's very dangerous.
It is.
And I think we'll delve into that, because even labor experts are worried about this, that this would collapse the country at a point.
This is why I complain about the NAPCO decision.
Let's look at the government's continuous indebtedness to SNIT. Over the years, we've all seen what has happened to SNIT. Let me maybe generally find out how you want to access SNIT, Steve. That we've seen the corruption allegations at SNIT, and we've seen government indebtedness. Right now, organized labor says that even the formula they use in computing the pension is questionable. They should tell them which framework set out that formula. And they even want to understand how it is computed. All of these issues. What's your assessment of SNIT?
I think SNIT has had a monopoly over pensions for God knows how. And SNIT has gone into all the wrong investments ever since I was a child. So growing up, becoming a worker, becoming a SNIT contributor, I've also sat back to see all the corruption. So I don't get it. I don't see why, as a country, we cannot depart from this SNIT monopoly. If SNIT is investing pension money wrongly, SNIT goes into housing investments, go into land investments, go into all sorts of investments which don't yield any return. So I think that government need to make SNIT accountable, more accountable, and to ensure that the contributions of workers are put to proper investment.
But it's the same government that is borrowing from SNIT and it's not paying.
Yeah, the key question is that SNIT is not investing properly, including government borrowing from SNIT and not paying.
Exactly. For instance, if government borrows SNIT pensioners' money and tell me that they're going to invest it into somebody who must mismanage his bank, and now it's become amalgamated bank, and so they are going to use pensioners' money, what am I going to benefit? What is the pensioners going to benefit from such investments? And those are the questions we need to ask.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, SNIT is investing wrongly. Government owes SNIT, but the key point is that SNIT started investing wrongly already, and its indebtedness to government is part of the wrong investment and the problems. I'm not sure how the SNIT laws work to make it possible for government to have unlimited access to SNIT funds. Things need to change so that we can have contributors' money feeling safe. I don't feel safe that my pensions are with SNIT, seriously. If I go on retirement in the next 20 years,
I think if
I'm
people
not sure
had
I'll
the
go home
opportunity
to
if they had the opportunity to opt out, they would not choose SNIT.
Yes. If I had the opportunity, I will opt out. And many families, including my family, are now looking at alternatives to raising pensions away from SNIT. So we're putting money every month into a private investment towards your pension. That is, we work in the formal sector. What about those in the informal sector who cannot afford this luxury? I think SNIT needs to be cleaned up, and being cleaned up means that we need to come to a consensus, a compromise, what the solution should be. I mean, civil society groups have been talking about SNIT's bad investments. It's time to come together to find a way to reform this SNIT we have. Otherwise, you and I will go on pension, and I'm afraid we might not even get 300. You might not even get it. So my key thing is that SNIT needs major reforms.
I slightly disagree. I think I want to have a bit of confidence in SNIT than a private pension scheme. In view of NAM1 and all the microfinance and small scale
swindling,
you know, all those swindling, I would rather SNIT keeps it, no matter how small it is. That notwithstanding, yes, SNIT needs cleanup. I think I have some kind of trust in the current leadership. I've had the opportunity to look at some of the numbers they've put up since 2016, and the trend is changing. They're growing. Funding is going up. A lot of contribution is going up. Those who are owing SNIT, SNIT is collecting. But look, Aisha, the problem with SNIT, pensions generally, is the law. Why should government, the political leadership, no matter which government that comes to power, why should it be the president's prerogative to appoint the CEO of SNIT, the board of SNIT, the managers and all that of SNIT? That is what is killing SNIT. Remember the days of Komla Dumo, the SNIT expose, some of the issues that came about. There were investment that was made by SNIT that SNIT management did not have any control over. It was purely for political decisions. Invest in this, we're home, this, that. By a professional investment opinion, those ones would not have passed the test.
Yeah.
But because of the political influence, also coming through the board, the chief executive were all political appointees, Senate had no option but to do it. Today, you remember the days, the software issue.
Yeah.
It was another political decision that was pushed Senate to invest there. If you had spoken to any of those investment consultants at Senate at that time, today if you speak to them, they all said that was a bad decision. That also notwithstanding, it is true that every investment is embedded in it a risk factor.
Yeah.
Good or bad, every investment. When we go and buy
as a country,
vehicles,
you should look out for. I mean, the good should be more than the bad.
But you see, investments are not predictable. If you are doing stock exchange markets or stock business, trading on the stock, any type of stock, you look for volatility, you look for fluctuations, you look for inconsistencies, and then you look for consistencies. But anything can change the pattern. If Ethiopia Airline is on the New York Stock Exchange, Dow Jones or any of those ones, you wouldn't know that Ethiopia Airline will be engaged in an accident. The moment an accident happens, every stock price drops.
But those are the minors. Every investment should come with a benefit.
But every investment is a risk.
The risk.
But that's what I'm saying, that you shouldn't be oblivious of the risk.
Sure.
So as long as you have a pension scheme, no pension scheme can just sit there and gather dust. Nobody does that.
So if you're suggesting that regardless of the risk that it poses, regardless of the risk, Senate is not doing bad?
No, I'm not saying they're not doing bad. That's why I've enumerated in the past some of the terrible decisions that they made. But I'm also saying that the decisions that they made are because of the political influence.
Okay.
The political pressure
that if
on
the politicians
them. The
wash their hands
the professional investment analysts at Senate will not make those mistakes. Even though the risks are involved. For instance, the housing schemes that they've been involved in, if it wasn't for the political influence, Senate will sell the houses on open market, and people will buy it on open market. They will still make the money, irrespective of the cost of the risk factors involved. After all, Ghana Home Loans, Debt Traco, Trasaco, they are all facing the same economic risk, and they are still making, at least they are breaking even. Nobody is making a loss. So Senate would have gotten away with it. The problem with Senate, the investment, the resourcefulness of Senate, is because of the political pressure on Senate. We have to change the law. The law that gives the president the power to appoint the CEO, the law that gives the president the power to appoint the board. What we can do is to amend the law and give institutional representation like the NMC, so that you have TUC has an appointment, a person on its Senate, the new pension commission has somebody there, then you have workers groups and all that.
They have organized.
Yes, but you see, but the CEO is still appointed by the president.
Definitely, I agree.
And the board is appointed by the president. Sometimes even the appointments in the management are all political. We cannot get anywhere once we do that. But for the terrible investments, everywhere you go in the world, even in America, people have made very terrible investment decisions that have cost people. So those ones comes with the territory. It comes with it.
But those should be a cue for us, so that we also don't find ourselves there.
Aisha, even if we make a loss and the decision was a professional one, I don't think that there's a problem. Because like I'm saying, the cost comes with it. But where, for instance, under President Mahama, you remember that Hope City. It was Senate money. $10 million was given to Hope City. Why couldn't Senate do it itself? Senate could have come up with a private company like what they're doing with the Senate flats.
And that project is still
Senate flats. Under President Rawlings, Senate flats were constructed in Adenta, Medina. There is flats and all in Tema, Community 3, Senate flats, other areas. So we could have just contracted a private company, enter into a private transaction with them, affordable housing, we'll do it, and that's bingo. Why should a political leadership say give it to Hope City? President Kufuor, they did the same thing, and we lost. So NDC and MPP, both of them are guilty. The solution is amend the law, take the power away from the politicians, allow the professional groups and the labor unions to appoint their leadership. Let them appoint a professional investment consultant or body to manage it. This software issue, it would have simply been done by NITA. How do you have a state institution that manages internet connectivity and then employ a private person to develop a software for you?
Interesting. And of course, we also had the president on May Day addressing workers, and one point he made clear is the fact that more than 80% of all government revenues is used in payment of salaries at the public sector. And this labor experts warn could be dangerous for the country. Listen to Austin Game.
80% of national income being used to pay public and civil service. I'm not too sure we can last the journey we want to carve ourselves getting out of IMF. It means we are in trouble. So we clearly must come together as a people and have a conversation, discuss without limit, and find a way of addressing this issue. It's all about bad planning. It's all about poor leadership. It's all about non-productiveness of the working people. And when I say working people, from managing director down and everybody, the issue I heard today on the radio, everybody trying to find some hidden agenda about it, talking about if you go to the workplace, there are no tools, there are no this, there are no that. We must sit down and talk about it because people go to negotiate at the table all the time. We must, in negotiating, we must talk about how will the work itself be processed, because we must generate before we share. And that's why the labor law is very clear. I hear people talking about let's amend what? Section 97 is the heartbeat of the law. You must share relevant information, and once you share information, then we all know how to enhance the productivity of the employer. We all know the tasks we have to perform. We all know how we should link productivity with payment. But we are paying people for putting in appearance at the workplace and expect that the country will grow. I don't want to blame anybody. And you can't certainly, the president is only one person. He cannot work for this place and work this place and work this place. He can only provide some level of leadership. All we need now is to agree. When we go to our negotiation table, it's about the work, it's about the income, it's about disbursement. And so pay is just a small segment of it. And so the problem the president was enumerating today, the most scary of it all, is not so much even about the pension again. It's about our unproductive nature. It's about the income that we generate, that 80%. We were chopping 70% and we said we were left with the bone. Now 80. I don't know what is left.
So you heard Austin Game, labor expert, there warning us that it could be dire for the country if more than 80% is used to work to pay workers out of the public sector. More importantly, and organized labor has raised this factor that if President Akufo-Addo wants us to reverse this trend, and he's throwing the challenge to us, where is government meeting us halfway? Is government coming out to tell us how much government is spending on its appointees, its staffers, presidential staffers, and all of that? If we start from there, then we can get somewhere. Because if you tell the ordinary Ghanaian that, okay, I'm not going to increase your salaries for the next 3-4 years because more than 80% is used in paying salaries and all that, and we need to reverse the trend. Whilst government keeps spending big, because over the years we've talked about government expenditure pattern. It's so huge, which does not correlate to the kind of revenue we generate. So if government is not meeting us halfway, how do we achieve this? You should be worried about this trend. I am extremely worried, and you know that the government wage bill is very huge. A lot of people, government keeps giving new appointments, and the ministers are not coming down. They're 110 and still counting. So I think you're right. We need to start seeing government setting the example in terms of numbers and in terms of productivity. I wouldn't have a problem if you have a job and your productivity is high and your work that you're doing is bringing in more money. But most of the times, government swells up the wage bill with friends, families, cronies, girlfriends, boyfriends. It's sickening. So when we are sitting back and we're seeing the cry of no jobs, and yet other people are well employed and hanging around doing nothing. I mean, there are times we get government appointees coming in on shows on our media houses, and they come and their cars' engines are on all 2 hours, all 3 hours with fuel burning, and girlfriends stashing those cars and
chilling out. I mean, we see them. I mean, this is not to mention anybody in particular, but this is a trend, and it has been a trend under all governments we've had in this country. So I think governments need to start caring about the general masses a little bit, bite some of the bitter pill, and let's all bite with you. But if you say things are tough, tighten your belt, and you are loosening your belt, you are fattening up, and you are filling the wage bill with your friends and family, that gets worrying. So I think the key thing government should do is to set a good example, cut back on the fat workforce, and demand more productivity, so we can see that we're generating more and using some to pay and still getting some for our reserves as a country.
And I think listening to Osingame, he makes a point right that if we want to play politics again with this particular issue, then we'll find ourselves wanting.
Oh, but we'll find ourselves wanting because the politics won't stop.
We've been wanting for a long time.
For a long time. It won't stop. NDC will play politics, MPP comes and they're playing the same politics. So and it's obvious. Under Fourth Republic, we've had NDC, then MPP, then NDC and MPP, and it's been consistent through. They're doing the same thing. Instead of building private companies to expand and employ people, government believes that itself can employ. So like I'm saying that if we're spending about 70% of our wage bill, of revenue on wage bill, then why NAPCO? What was the justification for NAPCO? You have a government that's already under a single spine salary structure. Look how we screamed that this is going to cause chaos for our economy. We negotiated with World Bank so that we cannot implement fully the single spine salary structure. Look at the problems we went through with organized labor just to agree on the single spine, with the problems we had with doctors, TUC, other labor unions, all because of conditions of service. And then that government comes and says, oh yes, NAPCO, I want to implement NAPCO, although NYEP is struggling, although you have youth in drumming, youth in whatever is struggling. Why don't you even study the existing employment schemes and see how you can even revamp that and ensure that you can remove those who have been on the scheme for a long time, transition them to better jobs that they can expand. But the key thing for me is also that over the years, as a nation, we have lost sight of, like Auntie said, the informal sector, vocational training, and the opportunity vocational training offers to push some of our employment challenges over there. Because the informal sector is so big. Look at people who are doing decorations, wedding planning, all those things. Our technical schools were supposed to be the nesting ground for those skilled labor or skilled area. But we collapsed it. And what did we do? For political expediency, we turned our polytechnics into universities, offering humanities. Completely wasteful venture. Wasteful. Just because we want to be seen politically as though this government wants to upgrade. And you see, because we have a problem with our education system and the mindset and the thinking, even the students in the polytechnics were also happy that they are being upgraded from polytechnics to university. At least, as if that was going to solve unemployment issue. At least, as if that was going to create employment. As if that was going to bridge the gap. That wasn't. The key was that we needed a reorientation of our mindset into thinking that people who do psychology are not better than those who do fashion designing, are not better than those who do draftsmanship. That is the key. So that if we are building about 10 or 100 draftsman's group in this era where land sales is everywhere, then you are creating employment. At least every company can employ 10 people. That's it. That is where the focus should be, in growing individuals to build themselves up and absorb the unemployment numbers, rather than government employing people. Because even under NAPCO, government can only do short-term employment, which again is going to drain the revenue in the economy. This is the reason why GRA is struggling. Because by all means, GRA has to look for the money to fund that. Government itself, go to GMPC right now. Aisha, go to GMPC. They are employing people who are not needed.
But I don't pity GRA at all, because GRA is actually burdening and overburdening about 40% of Ghanaians who have decided to be honest and truthful to pay their taxes, and let about 60% of the hook to be going about doing all sort of things. And we've seen, we've had documents showing how GRA officials are conducting themselves, that these Lebanese, they are engaged
Oh,
in
Lebanese,
all
serious,
forms
Chinese,
of tax
everywhere.
evasions. But they just
they are
go
even
free,
breaching the GIPC law, doing retail
you
business.
get my point. So I don't pity GRA when it comes to all of this. They must generate revenue. That's their mandate.
Yeah, but you see,
and
at the end of the day, Aisha, it comes back to us. Who are the beneficiaries of the economy? Who are the citizens in the nation? Because we will all struggle. Yeah. If GRA fails to do the work, and whether you pity them or not, we will suffer because your salary comes and is sitting in your accounts, and they take the tax, income tax, everything.
It's easy
they
to take. You are
yes.
a formal sector.
And see how when we were about to start the NHIA, you go to parliament and they say, oh, let's deduct. And they deduct because, yes, formal sector, they can forecast how much they can get because this is ascertained tax, ascertained revenue. So they take it. And you see, and those in the informal sector are not tapped. But they also, like I'm saying, it's leadership. Once we take away, again, like I'm saying, the politics, and government says, I am not an employer. I will not put it in my manifesto that I'm going to employ people. I am not an employer. I want to strengthen the private sector. Government is building links with private sector and bringing private sector like what Angela Merkel did. The president goes ahead of himself, negotiates with other countries to bring their plant here. Those are the things we want to see. Government has no business doing APCO. Government have no business doing NYEP. Introduce these private factories.
Recently, we saw one with fixing of electricity poles, which is a new one that is coming up, which was announced by the sports minister. So
electricity poles.
Yes,
and it's under the sports ministry.
Youth
in electricity poles.
Fixing electricity lights or poles or something.
Youth in power or energy.
Something like that. So that when
but actually, you will be amazed how big the informal sector. You will be amazed how big the informal sector is. And so I have always agitated that as a country we should not be losing sight of the informal sector. Take for example the construction industry. See how booming housing industry is. Can you believe in your wildest dream that not a single artisan who works in the construction industry pay taxes? That's just a side of the issue. None at all. I mean, you get somebody to work for you. I mean, I got somebody to work for me recently.
Was the person from Ghana?
Yeah, Ghana. And the minimum I pay is say 11,000 over a period. So I pay you small, I pay 2,000 here, I pay 3,000 here. But by the time that work is done, I have paid 11,000 cool money.
Yeah.
No taxes. Nothing. And this person has a good life and you have no idea about it. But you are working in the informal sector. All your income is taxed. And constantly you are taxed. And you're struggling to save and lump it up and pay to informal sector.
I think we tried to do the paperless system, the electronic payment system, which if this money had gone through an electronic payment system, then taxes would have applied.
But won't go through electronic
payment system. But that's when we have to speed. You know, as a country, at some point we started this electronic payment system. I think that as a country we need to speed on that, and this is why the NHI, the National Identification Cards, are very, very useful. Once we have an electronic payment system, that will reduce cash payment to the barest minimum. Then nobody can escape the tax.
I shall give you an example. When I was outside Ghana and I have to, for example, buy a gas cooker. When you go to the shop and buy the gas cooker, they do not add the other connectors to the gas cooker. They just sell you gas cooker and you come home. But what you have to do after bringing your gas cooker home is to call a designated number of the one who is supposed to come and install it to the gas system, because they have a central gas system. Now that person, you make a phone call to an agency, you make all payments to that agency. They send a person to you to fix it for you and go away. So the person who comes to do your work is going to take their money straight from the agency who would have been subjected to tax. That is what we should be doing. I mean, if you need a carpenter, for example, you should be able to have in your local community an association where you place a call and they send a carpenter to your house, you do the job, you pay the association. Carpenter goes for his money there it is taxed.
We will get there. We will get there. We will get there.
It will be lovely.
It's a long way.
I'm hopeful that we will get there.
It's a long way.
There will be one day that the Ghanaian worker would say, I'm comfortable now, and
I want to stay in Ghana.
I
don't want to go abroad and die in the Atlantic Ocean.
You know, that kind of thing. So we're hoping that we'll definitely get there one day. Let's hope that the politicians will listen to our plights and do something about this. But also something that happened this week, very interesting. And you know, as we're gearing to 2020 elections, we're more concerned about how the EC is collaborating and dealing with all the political parties. We've seen a rift between the EC and the NDC, and that mistrust is steepening. First, the NDC accuses the EC of planning to create some new 25 constituencies, 17 in the Ashanti region. Listen to Ibrahim Ahmed. He's a member of parliament. Okay, so we'll get that soundbite and play it for you. But how do you feel that about this whole accusation? The EC has denied, but she denies, the EC chairperson denies with a caveat. She says it is under our mandate, but we've not considered it.
I think if you should start.
Why do you want me to start?
The political heat.
Why do you want me to start? I think it's just typical. This is so typical. Just a replay of 2016. Did you not see what happened in 2016? The MPP was so mistrusting of Charlotte Osei.
Yeah.
Everything she did was under scrutiny. Of course, she didn't also make the job easier by some of the errors that she made along the line. Not legal errors, but sometimes some of these blunders here and there. We're seeing a replay of the same thing. I think it's very unfortunate. If it is not the agenda, then why are we screaming? But again, it also speaks to the fact of who appoints who. This whole issue is because of who appoints who.
Yeah.
It's not an issue based on merit.
Yep.
The NDC is suspicious of JoyNews because she was appointed under MPP. They are concerned about how Charlotte Osei was removed and how JoyNews came into the picture. So under there is no way NDC would trust JoyNews.
Yeah.
You know. So and if there's any reason for creation of new constituencies, for me, what is the problem? Legally, if we look at it, EC has a mandate to create new constituencies. But realistically, we don't need new constituencies.
Yeah.
We do not need constituencies. We have 275 members of parliament sitting in the legislature whose work is being questioned constantly by the voters who put them there. That they are not seeing the merit of it. What we end up doing is bloating the same expenditure, government expenditure, the wage bill we speak about, because all these people come under Article 71. All these people will benefit ex gratia after 4 years of being in the house.
Yeah.
And the next 4 years, they will benefit. And ordinary people don't have the right to benefit from ex gratia after every 4 years, which used to be the case. Previously, before 1992, workers were benefiting. When you go or you leave work, you had ex gratia. This was cancelled, but limited to Article 71 office holder, with the excuse that, oh, they cannot find jobs. Nobody will employ an MP. Nobody will employ a minister. They will become paupers. Do we care? But then they put them under Article 71.
Yeah.
And we are seeking to expand that. I will be greatly disappointed in the EC if they create more constituencies. Because realistically, there is no need for more constituencies until we are able to justify the 275 constituencies and the impact the 275 MPs are making on us.
Indeed.
For me, so far, we are not seeing any.
Indeed, one of the reasons the NDC gave is that even in Parliament, they are already
congested
in Parliament. They don't have space in Parliament. And the last time
because they bought Chinese chairs,
was explaining to me how you would have to push and push under your desk to allow somebody to
but is it not them who bought the Chinese chairs?
So
but have you seen the British? Have you seen the British Parliament? They sit on benches.
Yes,
so
fine.
We need to have all-round benches in a circle. So they line themselves.
You can go to timber market and do that.
One of the explanations they give is that there is no space in Parliament, and there are others who also feel
that's a bogus excuse.
It's not even the numbers that will make Parliament impact what we're looking for. It's not the numbers, it's the quality. So you think NDC is just making this Is it a genuine concern, or they're just
I think NDC's concerns are genuine. I mean, I'm a Ghanaian also. I don't think we need more than 275 constituencies. Even before the increase to 275, I wasn't in favor of that increase. I think that as a country, we need to stop thinking that numbers equal effectiveness. I mean, we need members of parliament to represent us, to make our local governance system work effectively. We don't need more numbers to make it happen. We need to get a quality system in operation to be sure that the existing MPs are doing the job that they need to do and do it effectively. For me, I think that's the crust of the issue. So I'm not holding brief for NDC because they are NDC, but they're bringing critical issues to the fore, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
We shouldn't lose sight of that. And it didn't end there, because at an IPAC meeting, there was a leaked tape and that was showing hot exchanges between the NDC General Secretary and the EC boss, Jane Mensah. Take a listen.
To understand us. The parties ought to understand us in the interest of this country. Going for electoral area registration means that we would have to bring on board additional kids. This is a meeting. You can express your views thereafter. But I think that going for registration on the electoral area basis, and Mr. Sedun Ketia, we gave you that respect when you were speaking, so we allow us to explain. You asked a question and we are answering you. So please allow us. You are making their side. You are making their side and obstructing the discussion.
I haven't said anything.
You were laughing.
So laughter interrupts me.
No, but when you were talking, we didn't. It's
Please,
like you are ridiculing us.
I beg you. Those who are making the noise, I have kept quiet. I'm not part of what is happening. If you have a personal problem against me, you may bring it up.
We do not have.
But please.
We do not have a problem against you.
I am here.
As I am speaking, I see you laughing.
So laughter and disruption, which
in my view.
So if I'm smiling, it means I cannot smile.
You are laughing.
So I cannot laugh.
Both.
So I cannot laugh.
Both. I think that we gave you the respect. If you start
respect is and if you put yourself in a respectable position, people will respect you.
Yes, and so
that's the advice I want. That's the advice I want. But that's not the issue. Look, the question I asked, I don't think that it solicited all the information you are bringing up. I'm asking you a simple question, and you go on delivering thesis.
Let us deliver a thesis. I think it's for the right good people of this country.
Yeah, stand by. So you had the hot exchanges between the NDC General Secretary and the EC Chair, Jane Mensah over there, and it was quite unpleasant, I must say.
Unpleasant.
And this seeming growing mistrust between the EC and the major political party, the NDC, opposition party, NDC, is certainly not healthy. And particularly as we're gearing up to election 2020.
I think Mrs. Jemenso overreacted slightly. I think if Sedun Ketia is... the confrontation was needless. It was needless. People have a right to feel free, even though it's an IPAC meeting. He has a right to smile. If she anticipated that he wanted to cause trouble or be truant, these are adults. Having an adult discussion about a very key issue that affects the democracy, the peace of this nation. There are certain things you should ignore. You should ignore unless you know. You see, when people have intention, you have to let them act it out before you can accuse them of that. I think it was needless.
And our understanding is that Sedun Ketia was asking whether the Electoral Commission had gone to Parliament to seek approval for an appropriation.
Which is a fair question.
Which is fair.
Very fair.
So if you might not like his disposition, you might not like him as a person. I don't know what the problem they have, because I'm saying this on the back of the fact that there have been many complaints coming from Jane Mensah at the time she was at IEA. And there are those who say that at her time at IEA, she was a bit dictatorial. I mean, I've spoken to some political actors who have said this to me, and they think that she's bringing this into running the commission. I think we don't need this.
We don't need but you see, people have their own shortcomings. I mean, whether Jane Mensah or anybody, Charlotte also had that. But I'm saying that when it comes to a national discussion like this, stick to the issues. Let the person prove profusely that they have done something that breaches the ground rules.
I think
we should do a
the
mature
bottom line
meeting.
is that there must be tolerant of each other, especially as we gear up to election
but if there's an
2020.
intention
We
to
must
create
be
controversies, we ought to know,
tolerance,
and we don't need it.
We must see this tolerance not only from the EC chair but also from all the political parties, and that of course experts are saying is the best way we can go, because IPAC has been observed, identified as one of the great tools we have if we can have very peaceful elections in this country. So
voluntary.
So tolerance is the key word. Unfortunately, we're unable to discuss the AGM petroleum deal because our time is up. Thanks so much for watching. Steve NT is anchor with TV3, and Ifya Pekua, Vim Lady, is editor with Adom FM. Many thanks for watching. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Enjoy the rest of our programs.